There's an urgent need for food transparency and traceability. Every year, the CDC estimates around 48 million cases of foodborne illnesses are reported. But tragically, around 3,000 result in lost lives every single year. So what does this mean for the food industry? Consumers are demanding to know where their food is coming from. As an industry, we have a responsibility to provide good food that our consumers can trust. Lack of visibility in the supply chain presents an industry-wide challenge. This affects both CPGs and retailers. But today, we're going to share with you how blockchain can be the solution. Can we come together as an industry to create supply chain visibility through blockchain technology? We're going to look at food safety and the current impact of recalls and the upcoming FSMA 204 compliance date. We're going to look at current supply chain complexity. And lastly, we're going to share a few real-life examples of blockchain. And by the end of our time today, you're going to know why blockchain is the solution. Now that we've set the agenda, it is my pleasure to introduce our team. We are Block Mortar. We have Alex Matzavinos, Niagara Bottling, Connor Frederick, Fry's Food and Drug, Maggie Strang, Del Monte Foods, Isela Rivera, Food for Less, and I'm Melissa Brockemeyer with Stater Brothers Markets.
This is not about Bitcoin or digital currencies or crypto assets. It's the underlying blockchain technology. Now people can trust each other and they can transact with anything from money to music to votes to their identities peer-to-peer.
Effectively, it's software.
Okay,
I mean,
so
it's a distributed database that's managed independently, and that inherent combination makes it a utility, makes it software effectively that has value and utility.
The business world of the future, say 10 years from now, is going to run on smart contracts. It's going to run on strong encryption and on, peer-to-peer based consensus mechanisms. So the core technologies underlying blockchain are going to pervade everything, just like the internet has, just like object-oriented software has, right? No.
So what is blockchain? Think of a large digital diary shared amongst a group of people. Everyone in the group can create entries on a page that represents a block. But before a new page can be started, a summary of the previous must first be recorded, creating a link between the two, representing a blockchain, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer network made up of participants that creates a digitally shared database where information is stored and transactions take place. Every transaction in a blockchain is verified by the network, and once recorded, becomes permanent and immutable. Each transaction uniquely encrypted, making it safe and secure. For the food industry, blockchain would give full visibility from farm to fork, giving real-time transparency to all participants. And it's important to remember, with blockchain, the more participants, the better.
The global food supply chain is incredibly complex. As companies have expanded globally with their suppliers and vendors and operations, as well as expanded their distribution across the country, it's become more and more challenging to identify where a given product is in a given moment in time. Traditionally, companies have used enterprise planning software tools such as SAP or Oracle, and these have been great up to a certain point because they do have their limitations in that not all of our partners are using these same tools. Some are still using Excel spreadsheets, some are still using pen and paper. This lack of uniformity in supply chain planning makes it very difficult for us to have visibility into the supply chain. And recently, a study of supply chain professionals in the food industry, 61% reported that they had limited visibility into their own supply chains. The path from farm to table is obscured, and there's a number of challenges that come along with this. So first I'll talk about paper shrink. So without being able to trace where a product is at any given point, there's this phenomenon called paper shrink, and I can explain it to you for those that might not know. But essentially what it is, think about the physical product that's coming into the warehouses. It might not exactly equal the numbers that we have on the books. And those really small discrepancies can really add up over time and equal a large financial impact on companies. Another issue that this lack of traceability brings us to is food safety. So without being able to trace the origins and the handling of products throughout the entire supply chain, we're unable to identify and address safety issues before they happen. And when they do happen, sometimes, we don't have the tools in place to effectively do recalls. So recalls right now are cumbersome and tricky, and they take a lot longer than we need them to. Furthermore, we're not exactly able to plan for disruptions in the supply chain if we don't have full visibility into it. So this prevents us from being able to mitigate or plan for potential disruptions such as transportation delays or natural disasters. And then finally, fraud. There are fraudulent activities that are happening in our supply chain that further hurt the integrity of our supply chain. So these challenges have real tangible consequences, but what I'd like to focus on is food recalls, because this is really impacting society at large. The average food recall costs a manufacturer $10 million in direct damages, and that does not account for the long-term reputational harm. However, we know that this number can be much, much higher depending on the scale and the scope of the company. So for instance, in 2022, Jif peanut butter had a contamination issue, and they had to pull 69 individual SKUs from shelves all across the country. And this resulted in over $150 million. And unfortunately, food recalls are getting worse in the United States. The FDA recently reported that we reached a 5-year high in 2023. This is up 19% versus last year. There's an urgency for us to be able to address this so we can prevent any additional financial impact as well as public health issues. It is critical for us to move as fast as possible in these scenarios, and I'm going to share an example of the most hazardous recall that happened in recent memory. This was last winter with the cinnamon apple puree squeezers. The FDA reported that there were over 500 cases of elevated lead levels in children under the age of 4, and that's going to impact them and their families for the rest of their lives. The FDA investigation found that the contamination was from a cinnamon that was sourced from Ecuador. Unfortunately, foreign vendors aren't always held to the same standards of safety as we are in the United States, but as the manufacturers and retailers of those products, we must guarantee that safety for our consumers. Fortunately, with blockchain technology, we would be able to identify where that contaminated product is in seconds, not days. And this would save us time, money, and most importantly, lives.
So as a result of accelerated recalls in the food industry, the Food Safety Modernization Act was enacted into law on January 4th, 2011. This law was to regulate how food is grown, processed, and harvested within the industry. It is a shift in overall industry focus that was traditionally responding to food recalls to preventing food recalls and foodborne illness. However, there is new regulation that is going to threaten the transparency of our supply chain. Section 204 of the Food Safety Modernization Act is going to regulate how food is harvested, processed, held, and transported. It's going to require any company that sells food on the food traceability list to maintain a traceability record for a minimum of 24 months. So what foods can we find on this food traceability list? It can be items as simple as peanut butters, to leafy greens on our wet racks, to fresh tomatoes in a can, to items that have tomatoes as an ingredient, ketchups, pizzas, salad dressings. There are over 1,000 individual SKUs that will now be subject to traceability laws as a result of Section 204 of the Food Safety Modernization Act. Along with this, the industry can anticipate additional overhead as a result of staying in compliance, which will increase administrative tasks as well as paperwork, which will further strain the bottom lines of our already stretched bottom line. Additionally, there's liability associated with non-compliance. The FDA could come in and shut down our facilities. There could be mandatory recalls and also fines, which will further strain the already complex, transparent supply chain. So, how does blockchain serve as a current and future solution to the transparency of our supply chains? Well, the supply chain as we know it is not always visible, available, or even trusted. With blockchain, it can bring authenticity to the products that we're selling, and it'll allow internal and external governance to look into our supply chain within a matter of seconds instead of hours, minutes, or days. And it'll ultimately ensure that we are in compliance with the Food Safety Modernization Act and also protecting the customers at which we serve.
Many companies are already using the blockchain technology. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how they're using the technology. They're using it to improve food safety and improve transparency. Some of these companies are Kroger, Tyson Foods, Nestle, and Anheuser-Busch. Today, I will be talking to you about how these companies are using the technology. Nestle understands that customers are demanding transparency. So they're using the technology to create transparency on one of their coffee brands, Suegas. Nestle has partnered with the Rainforest Alliance to provide beans from Brazil and Colombia. Both of these companies then enter information into a blockchain. The Rainforest Alliance provides additional data in a certificate that guarantees traceability of the coffee beans through the entire supply chain. By scanning a QR code in the packaging, customers can trace the journey of their coffee beans from the growing locations, information about harvesting periods, the factories where the coffee beans were roasted, and all the way to the customers. By being transparent, Nestle is being able to gain loyalty from their customers. Anheuser-Busch has launched a pilot in Europe. The pilot has been able to link everybody in the supply chain, from the barley farmers to the malt houses, through transportation, and once again, all the way to the customers. Other than creating transparency for customers about where their barley comes from, the technology is helping companies to switch from an old paper-based process of tracking products to a fully digital one, helping everybody in the supply chain to share information with all stakeholders.
We've just seen a few excellent examples of how this technology is being used in our industry today. However, you may be asking yourself, why should we implement blockchain technology into our organization instead of going with a more traditional database solution such as Oracle EBS or Microsoft SQL? The answer, in short, is that blockchain is a better fit for our industry overall and a more equitable solution for future-proofing our industry's traceability needs. Blockchain enhances the supply chain by providing real-time visibility, traceability, and authenticity for your products. We, as an industry, need to be connected to one another to benefit us all in the long run. Co-opetition is the name of the game, And adopting blockchain technology will help create standardization and ensure the future robustness of our industry supply chain, especially in the case of disruptions. We can act now and get ahead of the regulators to determine our own destiny instead of allowing that to be determined for us. There are many different ways to go about implementing this technology into your organization, whether that is through in-house development or via a third party. To showcase what this looks like from a third-party platform perspective, we are going to highlight one of the best examples of a platform that's currently supporting our industry today. IBM, which is a company we all know very well, has stormed onto the scene with their groundbreaking blockchain-powered solution, IBM Food Trust. This solution provides all parties involved with a safer, smarter, and more sustainable food ecosystem. Easy to implement into your business, this solution is being used worldwide. It's being used by Walmart to track food products throughout its supply chain. It's being used by Untello Produce in Australia to simplify food traceability from seed to store shelf. And it is being used by Pietro Concierli in Italy to optimize food quality, sustainable sourcing, and overall supply chain transparency. IBM's Food Trust is a real-life, best-in-class example of how this technology is supporting our industry today. Other large players such as VeChain and Ethereum have also developed their own in-house platforms that are as well supporting our industry today. Adopting a new technology can be a daunting task and something that, quite frankly, our industry has been slow to do. Having a proper strategy for blockchain implementation is key for its success. Understanding its feasibility and use cases is imperative, and knowing that blockchain is not a one-size-fits-all solution for every problem is important. Getting the buy-in from all of your supply chain partners is also very important, as blockchain is an inherently collaborative tool that relies on third-party data contributions, vetting, and sharing. Envisioning blockchain's potential will help it scale and interact with your other tools so you can get the most out of your investment. While blockchain can replace traditional database solutions, it's important to know that it can interact and enhance them as well. Lastly, testing the technology. As we've just seen, a pilot program is a great way to go about testing it in your organization to see its feasibility and use case. For all the finance folks in the room, you may be wondering what this will take from a financial perspective to make happen. It's a big question, but one that must be answered before any organization moves forward with the chain. The cost can vary depending on the size, scope, scale, complexity, and method of implementation. Simple use cases can range between 50 to 60K, while more complex use cases can range between 150 to 300K. That's a big number, but it's important to know that blockchain is generally cheaper than a traditional database solution, as it excludes third-party data brokers who charge a hefty transaction fee for their services. This may not seem like a big deal, but it is, and it puts the power back into the hands of our industry. The savings can be a little tricky to quantify, but one food recall prevented or mitigated will likely pay for your investment and then some, with the added benefit of safeguarding your firm's reputation. Other benefits included can be the reduction or even elimination of paper shrink, as you can now track a food product as it flows throughout your entire supply chain. FISMA is coming, and food recalls are already here. This is not a CPG problem. This is not a retailer problem. This is an industry-wide problem that affects and impacts all of us. Blockchain can empower the industry and help push it forward by creating more traceability and standardization and more future robustness for our industry overall. Can we come together and take on traceability now? The longer we wait, the longer we put our industry's time, credibility, and money on the line. Is that a risk that you all are willing to take? We have a responsibility to provide our customers with good, safe food that they can trust, and blockchain is the solution to that problem. So we are asking you all today to take a good look at your supply chains and understand the gaps that are leading to a lack of visibility for your customers, and to empower your organizations to Get on the blockchain now and start building out that network with each other and start building out that trust. We'd like to thank you all for your time and consideration today and open up the floor to any questions.
How easy is it for our vendors who may not have the same access to technology that we do to get involved with blockchain?
It would certainly be a lot easier than it is now, as blockchain does not have a lot of the financial barriers that going with another system such as Oracle or SAP would have, as it costs a lot of money to get onto those systems. The way I kind of think of it is like a Python or R or JavaScript. It's a free open source software that anybody can use. If a company doesn't have the talent on board to be able to make such a transition, there are companies like IBM who provide a much cheaper service in order to get connected to that blockchain. So it should be very easy for vendors, especially smaller or even foreign vendors, to get onto the blockchain network.